For today's Tuesday tip, I wanted to focus on one-to-ones. So if you've been following my videos, you know that these are incredibly important, and I will always say start off with the power of one. Do one-to-one with somebody in your network every single week. If you're part of multiple networks, make that 2 or 3 hours, whatever that is, in your diary. And the best way to do that, in my experience, is to batch it. So you might sort of say, I'm going to do that on a Friday morning, is to connect it to your networking meeting. So maybe you meet somebody for an hour before your networking meeting or arrange to meet them for an hour afterwards. So you're being efficient and effective with the use of your time. And if you're new to networking, doing the one-to-ones prior to going into the networking meeting means that you're walking into the room with somebody. So you've got a buddy going in as well, which can also make it easier and less daunting when you're going into a room full of people that you don't really know. But doing those one-to-ones is absolutely key. But what can then become overwhelming is like, how do I choose who to do the one-to-ones with? You know, if there's 15 people or 20 people in a room, how do I choose where to start? So my advice is to look strategically at the people who are in the room. Now remember, I'm also going to caveat that by saying you never make assumptions on what somebody does, because what you're trying to do is get to know them so that they learn how they can introduce you. And what somebody does today does not define who they know or who they could introduce you to. So be very careful about making assumptions. But what you can do is get strategic. So if, for example, somebody said, I have got a lead for you, or I think that I might be able to introduce you to somebody, that's probably going to ramp up in importance in your diary. So I would be setting and trying to organise that one-to-one as soon as possible. If it's a get to know you or starting a relationship, then you might want to push that out 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks, whenever suits your diary. But the key is to get something in your diary. And I find a really good way of doing this is that I batch the time on Calendly. So I'll say, right, I have 2 hours available or 3 hours available in a week to do one-to-ones. I'll send the link out to a person, they'll book in when suits them, but I've already defined the time in my diary that I will do the one-to-ones in if I'm not wrapping it around a networking meeting, as I suggested earlier. So think about those as a few ways. Getting them in the diary is the important thing. If something needs to move, that's absolutely fine, you can move it. It's easier getting it in the diary to move it than not having it in the diary. But always prioritise where there's going to be a strategic investment or link. So if somebody's a piece of business or wants to learn more about your business in order to be able to refer you, then you would look at prioritising these meetings first and maybe moving something else out. So I hope that's helpful. That's today's Tuesday tip.